Very challenging because we have been trying to squeeze in two presentations in an hour, and this time we are squeezing in 4 presentations in 1 hour. And I've battled many struggles in my life before. This is the most difficult struggle, getting people to listen to and respond to presentations. But we have to be very conscious of our time so that each presenter has the allotted time that was promised him or her. And so according to our program or schedule of activities, we now are on topic presentation number 4, relationship between ministers, council, and denominational agencies. And we have 4 presenters for this particular topic. We will take our Filipino friends first, and there are 2 presenters, one on the regional basis, regional level, and the other one on the denominational, the national level. And so they have divided the work, and I'd like to call on Reverend Renato Fitalsana to start off our reflections on this particular presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am grateful to represent all the pastors who are here. I am the immediate pastor, president of our CBMA, and anybody among the officers of the CBMA can present this. However, I was given the privilege. Thank you so much for that. So I'll be speaking on the relationship between the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches Incorporated and the Convention Baptist Ministers Association. First, I'd like to tell about the CBMA itself, what the CBMA is. The CBMA is the National Organization of Convention Baptist Ministers and Workers. And presently, it has at least 850 regular and associate members scattered in the whole of Philippine archipelago, but concentrated mainly in the islands of Panay and Negros. The national organization is made up of the national board, composed of 15 members, elected by the assembly during its annual meetings in the 3rd week every year of January. The national organization is divided into chapters corresponding to the kasapulanans of our convention. And there are now 11 kasapulanans, and therefore there are also 11 chapters in the whole CBMA, national CBMA. Now, down below the chapters are the circuits. Some chapters are made up of only one circuit, like the Luzon chapter, and some chapters in Mindanao. In Mindanao, we have 3 chapters. However, some chapters have 6 circuits, like Iloilo. I'm not aware so much about the Negros chapter. The chapters and circuits hold their regular assemblies at least once every year. And I am sure that they also have regular activities that they do regularly in the chapter level as well as in the circuit levels. At the top of the leadership of the CBMA is the president, presently in the person of Reverend Samuel Talha. Can you stand, please, Reverend Talha? Where is he? Okay. In the leadership, he is joined by 14 other members of the CBMA National Board, from where the officers are elected. Down below the national CBMA are the chapters also, headed by their respective presidents, and chapter boards and officers. And then, of course, below the chapters are the circuits. Most of the circuits, they don't have boards anymore, but they just have the set of officers starting from the president, the vice president, secretary, treasurer on that circuit. The 2 main activities of the CBMA are the annual assembly, of course, and continuing education, because our pastors meet regularly for the assemblies and for continuing education. And the continuing education usually are done in the chapter level and the circuit level. Aside from this, there are other programs as the president and other officers plan out and implement in the year. The chapters and circuits are also draw up their programs and activities aside from the two main activities and programs in the national level. Now let's come to the origin of the CBMA. The earliest pastoral gatherings were theological education in nature, called by missionaries. In the first Baptist associational gathering for training for evangelization, according to Halanduan 2003, the training for evangelization of the Philippine Islands. There were other gatherings, and these are in the kit, to address the theological and educational needs of the pastors. In 1927, a bigger pastors' institute was held on January 14 to 25, and this is now the start of the CBMA Institute every third week of January. Such institute gave out training certificates to participants. It even had honor students. Now, after the war, the General Secretary played a very important and significant role in directing training and placing of pastors. We inherited this from the strong leadership of the American missionaries. This is very significant. I'd like to tell this because right now, it seems that our General Secretary don't have so much that role anymore. Early on, after the war, the CBMA assumed authority of the convention over it. This is a legacy from the strong leadership of the American missionaries. And of course, also they have money, and much of the support of the missionaries and pastors come from them. It's easy for them to direct the pastors and supervise them. The CBMA that was formed in consonance with the creation of the CPBC in 1935 focused mainly on enhancing the pastoral ministry and support and fellowship. Its main activity is the Institute every third week of January. I have been attending the CBMA in the last 25 years. It was quite different today compared to like 20 years ago. It was then called an institute instead of an assembly, and now it's called an assembly instead of an institute. And of course, as institute, it was like still what was being done in the past, that the focus was on education, not on assemblies and meetings. However, for a time, until today, the CBMA had evolved. In 2008, the CBMA amended its bylaws. The amended bylaws does not define its relationship, however, with the CPBC. It only provides that the members are coming from the institutions and local churches of the convention. Interestingly, the amended bylaws provides the following committees: placement, ordination, publication, social service, advocacy. This is significant because personally I believe these things should be done by the convention as a whole, not just the CBMA. The other things, of course, are in the kit, and I assume that all of us have read this. Now let me go to the recommendation. On my part, in consonance with some of the pastors that I have talked with, we desire a stronger convention that will assume a greater role over the pastors and churches and organizations under it. The pastors to become the personnel of the convention, the local churches. Because often in the past, the convention can go directly to the congregation without passing through the pastors. And somehow, this has created some uneasiness in the part of the pastors. That the pastors feel that the CBMA is not fully incorporated into the general work of the convention, that they are like just on the sidelines. We also recommend that a line of authority from the General Secretary should be instituted, passing through the TEMC. The TEMC now has another name, and Pastor Joycel is in charge of that. He can talk more on this. And so, like what we have during the American missionaries, and right after, when the American missionaries left, the General Secretary has a line of authority from him to the pastors and to the churches. He directs the pastors. He also has a big hand in placing the pastors and supervising the pastors. Of course, it was a time when our convention was yet small, and the pastors were few compared today. We also recommend a competent General Secretary. We would like to see a competent General Secretary with a master's degree, not just the bachelor's degree with ordination. Times have changed, and we need a more competent and more knowledgeable General Secretary. Because if we want to see a stronger convention, we need a more experienced and capable General Secretary, because he will also be directing the pastors, of course, through an office in the convention. We also would like the convention, rather on the part of the CBMA, to define its relationship with the CPBC, to reflect loyalty and support to the convention. I'd like to say that recently, the CBMA had awakened to a sense of being a corporation as a legal entity, and so that it can be like a different organization from the convention. However, personally, and this is also the desire of some of the pastors, many of the pastors of CBMA should continue to be loyal and supportive of the convention. All the other things that I have, in fact, right up here have undergone the third revision already to make it short, and so I have really struggled to make it shorter this afternoon. Thank you very much. God bless all of us.
I have only 15 minutes to discuss with you the things that I have written in our book or in our text for this afternoon. And my topic is CPBC Incorporated and the regional and provincial organizations of the CPBC churches and institutions. This refers to organizations in which we recognize as part of the convention, but if you have to go into the bylaws of the convention, it is not included in the bylaws. So that's that's the point that we would like to discuss this afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank our brothers and sisters coming from the United States in helping us organize this program. We know that without you, I think it's very hard on our part to have this kind of consultation. Part of the history, we recognize here in the Philippines that our regional organizations, such as the Kasapulanan in Iloilo, and also the organization in Negros of churches, and the organization of churches in Capiz and also in Aklan. These Kasapulanans are older, much older than the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches Incorporated, and we recognize that. It is a fact, it is recorded in the history that there are some Kasapulanas that were registered under the Securities and Exchange Commission in the very early period of the 19th century. They were already organized and recognized as a corporate body. And the convention was only organized in 1935. And in the development and part of the history of the convention, the presidents of the Kasapulanans were member of the Board of Trustees. They were automatic members of the Board of Trustees according to the provision of the old constitution and bylaws. But later, because they were the direct members of the Board of Trustees, politics entered in the life of the convention. And we all also believe that politics per se is good. But in the experience of the convention, elections every year was politicized. Once there is an election, or once there is an election of officers of the convention, specifically for president, vice president, and other members of the Board of Trustees, the election was always politicized, and it was a traumatic experience, and it has been an experience of the convention. And to counteract with this problem, because of this direct voting of president, and you can hear that in the history of the convention, that many people or members of our churches who came from large Kasapulanans they're saying they're buying votes, spending money in bringing delegates in order to be voters. And that has been the Filipino mentality and Filipino politics in the convention. And to counteract with this, and usually, the leaders in the history of our convention, they were coming from large Kasapulanans. I think I must have to be frank. Large Kasapulanans are the Negros Kasapulanan, and the Kasapulanan here in Iloilo, and also partly Kasapulanan from Capiz in Aklan. And in order to counteract and to cure this, there was that amendment made by the convention to amend the bylaws. At least it minimized politics in the convention. And there was then, and that what the result of the amendment of the bylaws is that there was already an election, and all the members of the Board of Trustees, and it was also amended by the presidents of the Kasapulanan at the time, because they were members of the Board of Trustees of the convention. And in the amendment, they have decided that all the members of the Board of Trustees must be elected by direct voting, and it was only the members of the Board of Trustees that will select their officers in the convention. So now that was the system, that was the structure in the convention. But in the midst of all these problems and concern or issues in the convention, brothers and sisters in the Lord, we all know that we don't depart from that idea that the convention is a fellowship. It's a fellowship. It's a recurring idea, even as I noted in that paper, I think one recent discussion happened in the Board of Trustees and the corporation meeting of Capiz Emmanuel Hospital. And it was underscored by the chairman of the Board of Trustees, and also pointed out by Dr. Domingo Gil, and the importance of fellowship. And we maintain that idea that we as a convention, we must have to maintain fellowship. And fellowship in the context of the organizational life of the convention. We did not detach ourselves from the idea of fellowship. We want to have fellowship. We want to fellowship with one another. But all this, in the midst of this fellowship and the issue of fellowship, again, there was an idea that disrupts the idea of fellowship. And I would like to discuss that. But we in terms of practice in the convention, we do believe that fellowship should be a part of our practice, and it should never be compromised. It should never be compromised in whatever sense or in whatever context. I noted there in our paper that true values can only be tested within the convention through the behavior of the member churches, institutions, kasapulanans, and organizations that can be derived from the collective opinion about the experience of values and practice of fellowship. And you can hear that in our sharing and in our discussion with other organizations or kasapulanans of the convention. one thing that disrupts the idea of fellowship or the practice of fellowship is the assertion of local autonomy. I think in the morning session we have discussed this partly, but we do believe that even though there is that assertion of local autonomy, in the life of the convention, in the life of the Board of Trustees, and in the practice of the Board of Trustees, we see to it that the Board of Trustees creates a collective decision. It's not a decision of one person, but it is a collective decision, and we recognize that in the context of the convention. Also, this collective decision, we consider this as our social or cultural method of control in the organization. This is not a control of people who would like to impose something, but we consider this as a collective decision. And that collective decision is based in a social and cultural method of control, because we don't want to be controlled by one person, but it must have to be the control of the organization. And again, it is our, thank you, 10 minutes. Again, we do believe that there is also a need for authority and respect in the convention. If there is no respect and if there is no exercise of authority, I think we will be in disarray. And also, we recognize in the Board of Trustees and also in the convention that in the exercise of control, we can show there the exercise of authority. No, the exercise of the authority. So, but all in this discussion and in the struggle of the Board of Trustees, local autonomy is generally understood by the organizations in the convention and in the local churches in the context of independence. No, we're independent. Why kadi labot? You don't have to intervene. It's because we are an independent body or organization. And so I would say that there is really a need for us to free ourselves from the misleading, I would like to use that word, misleading significance of local autonomy. And I think there is really a challenge for us to study and to understand what do we mean in the context of Baptists, the idea of local autonomy. Is local autonomy should be understood as independence. And that has been the assertions of many. And that's why I would say that the assertion of local autonomy is always a fuzzy issue. In the context of CPBC, I would say that our understanding of local autonomy is subjective, and I think this morning they used the word very individualistic kind of thing. And because of that idea that local autonomy is independence, but during the discussion, because before we have this gathering, we have been discussing these issues in many fora of the convention. And there has been an issue of whether or not we have to maintain centralization or we have to decentralize the leadership of the convention. Or we have to assert independence or we have to assert independence. And I think it's very clear. But in the scripture, we know that the church is a unity, and we are interrelated, and we are all connected. And according to Paul Tillich, he would say, and he would argue, that the church is not an organization, but a spiritual community. And I would like to adhere to that idea. And biblically, the church is called the body of Christ, and the body is all connected to each other. And I would like, in the life of the convention, we would like to assert that. One important thing that we'd like to also to pose is that we need to understand our structure. Sometimes it's really a struggle. What is really the structure in the convention? The organizational structure of the convention. In every organization, organizational chart is very important in understanding her work, flow of authority, and life. I have been proposing during the discussion before this formal gathering, I have been proposing to some pastors and churches that we must have to make a structure. that the convention or the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches must be above and all the other organizations must be under. But others would say, no, we cannot say that because we are also an incorporated body. Why is it that you want to assert that we will be under the convention? And again, as I have said, we don't have a very clear understanding of the organizational chart of the convention. Organizational structure points to the relationship that includes, and I would say that this is very important, that it must have to include policy making, program implementation, decision making, supervisory reporting, and also command and control relationships. For me, these are the things that are very important in the life of the convention. My expectation, I would like to summarize this now, 5 minutes. I think I can finish in less than 5 minutes. We would like to see a clearly defined relationship among our churches, institutions, organizations, and kasapulanans and circuits. I think this is really a pressing issue in the convention now. What is our relationship with the kasapulanan and the relationship of kasapulanan to the convention, to the circuits? I think we need to define that. And the writing of policies and guidelines should be participated in, if we have to do that, by all the constituents of the convention to make it workable and acceptable to all. Because usually the defense is, no, that's yours, it's your policy. We were not part of that policy, so just continue with your policy. And I think there is a need for us to make this policy participated in by many constituents of the convention so that we can own the policy and we can own these programs, guidelines for the convention. I think we are more than 100 years and still we are struggling in terms of policies and guidelines. So thank you. I think I finished the summary of my paper. Thank you for listening. Good afternoon.
Thank you for your transparency, Dr. Mangano. Okay, we will move on. And this time, we listen to our partners, and there will be two of them who will share also this particular topic. We call on Ma'am Carla, and after her, Dr. Ben Chan.
I went to my first Sixers game at the Wachovia Center in Philadelphia a week before Easter in 2005. It was Filipino night, and a Phil-American dance troupe regaled the crowd with their dances, especially the tinikling. So I was so excited last night to see Sam and Ben and Vicky and Denise try the tinikling. In spite of having seen it many times, the dance still mesmerized me, and still did last night. I was drawn into the beauty of the rhythmic opening and shutting of the bamboo poles and the agility, coordination, and energy of the dancers. In many instances, I held my breath as I watched the nimble feet of the dancers leap in and out. You saw it last night, between the bamboo poles without missing a beat or a step. The dancers gracefully danced to an enthusiastic audience, and last night you saw that. I stood there and watched with pride and a renewed appreciation of my Filipino heritage and culture. The Sixers lost to the Bulls that night, but the tinikling saved the evening for me. I present this paper as an invitation to dance. This is a bold step for me because I am not a good dancer, and I did not try last night, if you have noticed. Having grown up in a Baptist church and school that only allowed square dancing, at least that's how I remember it. And Ma'am Ruiz and Miss Juarez. When I was a teenager, I only managed to learn it and hop in and out of the bamboo poles and almost sprained my ankle. And I only tried for at least 30 seconds. So what do I mean by shall we dance in terms of our partnership, our friendship? I have three things in mind, very quickly. First, I would like to offer a bow to our God, the greatest dance partner of all times and places, the God, the Holy Three-in-One, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The same God who patiently taught us is still teaching us how to dance and learn to become partners in missions that began for us over 100 years ago. Now, not everything was smooth, and we're hearing that today. We had our missteps, and we will have our missteps and falls. But our divine choreographer had unfailingly lifted us up and will lift us up time and time again, and has picked us up, and now we pick up where we left off in this historic moment. I am honored and blessed to have you as my dance partners in this dance. It is a challenging dance, that's for sure, but a beautiful one. Second, I would like to share a new dance that I am learning and have discovered as part of the American Baptist Churches USA family. And third, I am eager to hear more insights, more dance tips that I'm going to learn metaphorically, because literally I'm not so sure I could really dance that well. Now, I am going to share a little bit of my experience. I am the Minister's Council. If you've been to the Esplanade, and I hope our American Baptist team will be able to go to the Esplanade in Iloilo, you'll see that big sign that says, I am Iloilo. And I was there, and I stood, and I became one of the eyes in the Iloilo. And as I was preparing this paper, I realized in the midst of all this information, there are a lot of information available about ministers, the Ministers Council ABCUSA. But I realized I am the Ministers Council ABCUSA. I am one of the faces of that council. And I learned that as interim pastor, and then eventually as called pastor at Central Baptist Church of Woodbury in New Jersey, where I currently serve as senior pastor. And one of the things that I have learned there in terms of dance steps is that because of my membership with the Ministers Council ABCUSA, I was able to join a group called WOW, Women of the Word. And this group of women, actually ecumenical, they're Methodists, and I think in this group we also had a Mennonite, and then of course there had to be at least one American Baptist minister as a member, because it was, I think, through a grant that was given through American Baptist churches. And because of that, when I was going through my ordination process with the guidance of the ABCNJ Professional Ministry Committee and the Ordination Committee, my WOW colleagues provided this additional support through prayers and their collective wisdom as women ministers. So I am thankful that the Ministers Council, ABCUSA, my regional family, ABC New Jersey, and the local New Jersey Ministers Council, and my association, I belong to the Greater Delaware Valley Association in New Jersey, work together to support all ministers, including myself. Let me just share with you the story, the bigger story, which now I am a part of, because I also was a member of the CBMA, and I still have my ID, but I haven't paid my dues. So now, the description. The Ministers Council is an associated ministry organization of the American Baptist Churches in the USA. This means that it is a separate organization that has covenanted, that's the word, covenanted to be in ministry partnership with ABCUSA and related denominational organizations in order to fulfill God's mission through the ABCUSA family. According to their website, the Ministers Council is the recognized representative of those in professional leadership in the ABC. When the ABC seeks the opinion of clergy, they turn to the Ministers Council. Thus, the Ministers Council is an organization that advocates for and increases the impact of clergy within the ABC. Now, here's the history. Ministers Council was officially started on June 19, 1935. It is interesting to note that this was the same year when the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches was organized. Now, according to the historical records, the Committee on the Ministry of the Northern Baptist Convention met with the representatives of the Board of Education and the Ministers and Missionaries Benefit Board. They presented recommendations for the formation of a Ministers and Missionaries Council for the purpose of fostering fellowship, and the enrichment of ministry. To avoid confusion with the Ministers and Missionaries Benefit Board, it was decided that the name of the council be the Ministers' Council of the Northern Baptist Convention. The name carries on to this day, with the only change being the name of the denomination, ABCUSA. The recent developments after 80 years of existence, service, and partnership with ABCUSA national, regional organizations, and local chapters, the Ministers' Council ABCUSA ratified a new set of bylaws on August 12, 2014 in its Senate and annual meeting at the American Baptist Assembly in Green Lake Conference Center. This new set of bylaws were in effect in January 2015. In the newly ratified bylaws, the Minister Council's mission statement is stated as follows. The Ministers' Council is an autonomous, professional, multicultural organization of ordained, commissioned, and lay Christian leaders within the American Baptist churches in the USA. We are women and men who advocate for and covenant with each other to deepen our spiritual journey and to increase our effectiveness as persons who are accepting the call of God and church for the advancement of the gospel mission of the Church of Jesus Christ and to proclaim His truth in a prophetic voice as led by the Holy Spirit. Now, in terms of their leadership and structure, you could find in my paper that it is made up of a board of governors and staff, and the Senate is made up of the board of governors and local chapter representatives. Local units or chapters are independent from the National Ministers' Council and have a separate set of officers, bylaws, events, and programs. The local chapters are encouraged to work with the National Ministers' Council and the ABCUSA regions. The following are eligible for membership in the Ministers' Council: ordained ministers, commissioned leaders, lay professionals, seminarians, persons serving an American Baptist church, and persons serving an auxiliary organization. So the Ministers' Council website has an online link. In fact, I used it to pay my dues. And I would go there and then individuals can register or renew their membership for both national and local chapters. So I'm a member of the national chapter and also a member of the New Jersey chapter, and I have to pay dues for both national and also local based on my salary level. So it's not just the same for everyone. It depends on how much you are able to pay. National membership does not, like I have experience, like I talked to both the local and the national, and said that not all chapters work very closely with the National Council, but they are working on that. As of December 2015, there are approximately 1,200 members of the Ministers' Council national level and 32 local chapters. And I had gotten that from Reverend Jackson, who is now the executive director. So the members' benefits are access to information and services that enhance and enrich ministry, biennial ministers' conferences, opportunities to participate in online webinars and seminars, discounts on books, continuing educational opportunities, even clergy attire, mga robes, monthly newsletter and semi-annual ministers magazine publications, members-only access as new benefits are made available, and access to standards such as the Code of Ethics, pastoral transition guides, and orientation standards. In terms of programs and partnerships, Reverend Deborah Jackson, the executive director of the Ministers' Council, the national organization, started a new initiative focused on clergy health and wellness, and it was launched in 2014 in partnership with Ministers and Missionaries Benefit Board, we call MMBB, and American Baptist Home Missions Societies, ABHMS. Dr. Jackson has re-energized the momentum of the Together in Ministry Capital campaign and has now launched the Ministers' Council Endowment Fund through a partnership with the American Baptist Foundation that will sustain pastoral excellence for decades to come. So, according to the newly ratified bylaws, the Ministers' Council cooperates with the American Baptist churches in the USA in the purposes and objectives of that body. The Ministers' Council may contract with the Office of the General Secretary of the American Baptist churches in the USA and its successors for administrative services. The Ministers' Council has a denominational relationships committee made up of their officers, ministers, and missionaries benefit board representative, international ministries representative, American Baptist Home Mission Societies representatives, and local units representatives. The Ministers' Council denominational partners are ABCUSA, American Baptist Home Mission Societies, American Baptist International Ministries, American Baptist Women's Ministries, Ministers and Missionaries Benefit Board, American Baptist Women in Ministry. So the ABC Regional and Local Ministers' Councils has a total of 34 units. I have come to the end of my presentation. Hopefully, I'm still within time. My hope is that what I've shared has been helpful in our continuing exploration of new ways to dance as mission partners. And I consider it a great blessing to learn how to dance in both the CPBC, because I was born and bred here and grown here, and now I'm with ABC, and I have two families. And that's really very meaningful and close to my heart, because I also I'm married to an ABC USA pastor. In fact, we met because of a mission trip of the ABC&J mission team here in Central Philippine University. Our family is our two families merged together, ABC and CPBC. And I was sharing this with my husband, Dave Naipa, who knows CPU quite well, that I said, Dave, both of us have three legs. We're not that great in dancing, but God has brought us together so that we could learn this particular dance. So as I end, and I believe that as we try and learn to dance together, and I have a lot more information if you want, but I would like to just emphasize that it's God's Spirit leading us, and the Spirit of Christ. And I think even if we have missteps or we step on other people's toes, there's always that redemptive spirit that comes from Jesus Christ. So I would say, shall we dance? But because I'm not that good, I'm going to let you sing, because that's one of the things that I love to do and Filipinos love to do. Shall we sing? So I'm going to teach. Okay, ABCUSA team, can you say the words abaw? How about it? ABC lang, Noy. Noy, then again. ABC. Ang mga kano. Okay. No Elmo, you're exempted. So, abaw. Say abaw. Three times. Abaw. 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 Now, that means like, oh. But, ang mga Pilipino, yan, makanta kita, because in 2 Timothy, all right, and this is the ending. The 2 Timothy 1:6, and I'm not going to read it because it talks about rekindling the fire and how all of us at one time, especially those who are dating, had been laid hands on. And I think that's part of what we're doing now. We're rekindling the fire. So ang dughan ko. Dughan, I think it's metaphor more of like heart. I'm not going to mention na karoon ng mga dughan ng iban, okay? Ang dughan ko, gakalayo. My heart is on fire, It's hot. It's mainit gid. And now your turn. Abaw. Okay. Ang dughan ko, gakalayo. Mainit gid. Abaw. Thank you.
Well, I deeply appreciate the way that we are all of us are so attentive to the presentation. What time is it? 4 o'clock. We work early in the morning from what time? 8 o'clock and all the way through. I don't see anyone sleeping at all. Okay, so we must have had very good presenters, right? Should we give them a big hand? Now, hang on there. After my presentation, a break, and then there's one more, okay? So I will take maybe 10 to 15 minutes to share from my heart following the 3 presentations on the same topic of the Ministers' Council and its relationship with the denomination and the other members of the denomination. I have to confess that I read all the 3 papers before I wrote mine, so I cheat. Okay, so I have realized how a pretty complicated relationship between the Ministers' Council and the convention and the other members' body. And I also realized that the context of talking about the Ministers' Council of CPBC and ABCUSA is very different. I think my colleague, regional executive colleagues, can correct me if I'm wrong. The blessing that we have for the Ministers' Council of ABCUSA is that neither do they have power or money. Is it agree? Okay. So it saves us from, in fact, a lot of problems. Okay. And that's exactly the issue I want to speak to. And I hope that my reflection is more from the ABCUSA, but I hope that the reflection that I draw can be shared and useful to the context of CPBC as well. So if you look at my paper, basically I believe that there are 3 ways of talking about the relationships of the Ministers' Council and the denomination and the member bodies of the denomination. The first way is, I think Carla has done it very well, that is, we talk about the constitutional relationship. We talk about the structural relationship. You know, our 2 presenters also did a wonderful job to give a very clear presentation of those structural relationship of CPBC and CBMA and the issues that come with it. Now, so that has been covered, and in fact, I'm trying to avoid that question, okay? Because it is I consider it as a problem that cannot be resolved in a simple way. It's so complex because it involves power, it involves the process of decision making. But if I have any wisdom I can share with you about structural relationship and any issues related to management, I boil down in 2 words. If you asked any structural relationship, ask these 2 words. That is, in your relationship, do you see transparency and mutual accountability? Now, it's not accountability one way, it's mutual accountability. If you can ask that 2 questions, you may not get the solution, but I can guarantee you that you see the problems, okay? And from the problem, you can, lead yourself to the solution. Well, as I said, I'm not going to share from that approach. Neither am I going to touch on, in fact, something that Carla has mentioned, that is, we can also talk about the cooperation in programs. That is what actually the Ministers' Council has done, in many ways, very marvelous way, with the denomination or with other members of the body. There are a lot of good things that we can talk about it. But I try not to talk about it because, when I joined international ministries, I made a terrible decision. Because I was a pastor before I joined international ministries. So I have to, in fact, have to do a lot of relearning because I do not know how to serve as an area director, which is mostly an executive function and as a manager. So I pray, actually I make that prayer, okay? You may laugh at me. I pray to God, God, make me a good bureaucrat. Now, I don't know how good I am as a bureaucrat, but I do make that prayer. However, I know, I think as many of you, deep down in your heart, when you were called, and when we are called as a pastor, especially to full-time ministry of the church, I can wear a hat of bureaucrat. I can wear a hat of a director, whatever hat I put. But deep down here, I'm a pastor. I'm a pastor. That is what my concern is. That is what I care about. And that is the approach that I would like to share with you. So I invite you to join me in my journey. As I'm reflecting in my journey, I hope that we walk on some common path as well. Now, if you are like me, you are now already in a key position, you're a bureaucrat, whatever. Okay, think 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or 60 years ago when you are a new pastor. You just being called to be a pastor, and your heart, forgive me, is not corrupted yet. Okay? You're not corrupted yet. You have a pure heart. You love God. You love the people that you see. You love the brothers and sisters that you're called to minister. Okay? Now put yourself back to that thinking. And I believe that, many times when we think of a pastor, okay, I do not know what image that you have. Now, but in the journey of American Baptists, this is the picture that I come out with. Now, there's some context about it. At that time, I'm young, educated, I have a lot of energy. What happened when you enter a denomination that when you have all these criteria? I'm the yellow one. All these general secretaries, regional secretaries, whatever home mission society, at that time national ministries, in the management, they all look at you as if you're the Messiah, okay? And they want to find an answer from you to say, hey, help our denomination or whatever to find a new way. And forgetting that, who am I? I'm just a lonely, marginalized, humble, nobody, little bub, okay? So I'm speaking as a pastor that really very fresh and really nobody. I'm nobody, okay? And entering into, a denomination, okay? That is a journey that I will share with you. And then, in fact, in my sharing, I will also touch on another issue. In our theological reflection, we always talk about how Christian, or in fact as a person, we have the being and the doing, right? We need a balance. We cannot only be successful in all the doing and forget who you are, right? So we always ask the question, how to keep a balance of the being and the doing? So I ask one question. If we as a Christian, as a person, we need to ask about being and doing, how about organization? Can we have an organizational being as well? I'm addressing ABCUSA. I'm talking about our regions. I'm talking about international ministries. I'm talking about national ministry. We have a lot of doing, right? But what is the being of our organization? That is, in fact, what I'm, you may say the theological reflection underline what I'm sharing. So, what is my journey? As I said, I started my journey in going to the seminary. So basically, I in fact finished my MDiv in Hong Kong in the Chung Chi Theological Seminary. And then I went to the States to pursue another master's degree. Amazingly, God has an amazing plan that, I was studying at Yale Divinity School in New Haven, Connecticut. And there's one single Chinese church. Now, Filipino, we go to Filipino church, Chinese, or go to Chinese church. We find some affiliation, right? And then it happens that the Chinese church, the Calvary Chinese Baptist church that I went to, is also an American Baptist church. And even more amazingly, that is the pastor of the church at that time, Reverend Charles Kwok, came from the same hometown where my parents came from. Now, there's a natural affiliation, and that, I'm attracted to it. But I think more importantly is that after I joined the church, in fact, frankly speaking, without really any plan to stay at the church or stay in the U.S. at that time. I was very well taken care of by Charles and his wife. My whole family, was very well taken care of. But the most amazing thing that happened to me in attending the church is that Charles kept on telling me about American Baptists. Not even one bad thing about American Baptists. Now, my fellow colleagues of ABC know what I mean. When we talk about ABC, what is the first thing we talk about now? Oh, you know what? And then you can have another 2 hours of complaining about, the denomination. However, but Charles, in my life, in my first contact, because I was a Christian Alliance in Hong Kong, American Baptist is totally new and alien to me, okay? But Charles keep on telling me how good American Baptists are throughout my whole, period of study. And then I still remember very vividly that I was invited to attend a gathering of Asian American pastors. These are all, Asian. And in the meeting, all the pastors share about their dreams, their work. And basically what they are talking about is how they would like to evangelize their families and their neighborhood and their friends and in their workplace. Okay. And then, in the conversation, that because I'm amazed, wow, this is wonderful, this pastor has a lot of energy. Then in the conversation, I found out that all these pastors serve very small churches. 20 people, 30 people. Now, it was a shock to me. Now, I talked about the marginalized, a moment ago. Who are you? I suddenly find a bundle of pastors who are like me, small, nobody, marginalized, lonely, and do not know what to do. However, they have big dreams, despite who they are. And so, I was attracted to American Baptist because of Charles and because of all these Asian American pastors who are nobody, okay? Not because of the programs, not because of the structure. I'm not saying that programs and structure are not important, they are very important. But what I'm saying is that what attracts me as a denomination is the human face. That is why I asked our organization, do we have a being? When we explain about American Baptist or CPBC, are we telling people, oh, this is what we do, and how successful we are? Or can we proudly say, you know what, I'm a member of ABC USA. Do you know what, I'm a member of CPBC, and then tell you why I enjoy it so much as a member. The human face is the attraction to me. However, my journey does not stop there. If I stop there, probably I will go back to Christian Alliance, whatever. My journey will be very different. Oh, I have 15 minutes? Oh, I must have borrowed some time from the previous presenters. Okay. I think the blessing for me is that not only did I meet Charles and the Asian American pastors in New Haven, Connecticut. After I finished my study, how we Asian, make decision. We do not in fact ask the subordinate. So Charles basically made a decision for me to serve in a church. Okay? Oh, he did ask me, but the answer is, what time will you go? It's not whether you will go or not. It's more, what time will you go, right? So I was arranged to serve in a church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In case if you have not been to Milwaukee, go in winter. Okay. So, the more blessings to me is that I was so welcomed not only by the church and by the community of Milwaukee, but by the regional office of Wisconsin. Now, I do not know when new pastors come to your Kasapananan or to our region, what is the experience. Let me tell you frankly, many of our Asian American pastors do not feel welcome by the regions. Not these five, they are wonderful regions, okay? We had bad experience, okay? My experience, I was so welcomed by the regional office, and also under the regional office we have, I think it's your chapter or what, under Kasapanan you have circuits, right? So we have associations. I was also so welcomed by the Milwaukee associations. I was so welcome to an extent that, in fact, I was invited right away to sit in several committees. Now, don't forget, I'm only a yellow, nobody, small, marginalized, know nothing about, buck, right? But I was received, I was invited, I was welcomed like a VIP. And even more amazingly, now, of course, I know the reason afterwards, a pastor by the name of Richardson almost became became my mentor. So he told me about ABC in a much deeper level, and then basically he visited me and encouraged me and gave me a lot of surprises in challenging me how to do ministry. For example, I do not pastor a big church, it's also a small church, and then I talk about the need of the community, and Reed will say, why don't you start a local newspaper? Okay, can a pastor start a local newspaper? Yeah, I mean, I was not a number of a regional office nor your circuit. I'm a person. I'm a person that someone not only care for me, but in fact, spend their time and energy to mentor me. And then the denomination and then the region, in fact, at our national ministry at that time, made an arrangement for me to attend several conferences that I feel so welcome and connected, like to the Asian American Baptist Caucus, and also in fact, I went to a conference, I still consider it one of the best conferences I have attended. It's called the Fellowship in Hands, or Fellowship of Hands. I don't know, some of you remember that. Oh, maybe I'm too senior, I shouldn't be. But I learned about ethnic inclusiveness in that conference. Again, not only did I see the human face of the denomination, I later on understand that all these programs were put together by a very important, significant cooperation of the denomination, the regions, and societies of the denomination. I mean, it is a cooperative effort. But I think more importantly is not only the cooperation, but the relationship. It's the relationship. If I do not now, I am able to tell you my experience. It's not, what actually did they teach? All the details I may not remember, but I remember faces and I remember the relationship and trust. That is, in those conferences and in those conversations, I can in fact open myself, I can open my heart and talk to them, and I know that they will not despise me, they will not criticize me, they will not say, wow, how can you do that? Or how can you think about that? I have this kind of relationship and trust, and all the programs they have designed, in fact, address to the very practical need of pastors. Now, and let me add one word. I don't know pastors in the Philippines, but I believe you share the same struggle as a pastor in the US. Spiritual nurturing is very important. I totally agree to that. Every young pastor or new pastor should have a spiritual mentor from the denomination or association so that someone guide you, encourage you. However, I would also say that if you do not understand the financial struggle of a pastor, you're missing a very important element. You can pray for me 365 days, but you pray and live and then do not understand that, I return and then my wife and I are in conflict because of our financial situation. So I always say we pastors need both spiritual guidance as well as very, very practical guidance and advice and methods to resolve some of the practical issues like the financial issue that we have, I have just talked about. But anyway, I am very fortunate because, after, I was attracted to the denomination, someone continued the work that guide me into a deeper level of my relationship with my colleagues in ABC-USA. And let me fast forward my journey a little bit. In 1992, I became the area director of East Asia and India of International Ministries. The good thing about it is that I learned how to exercise some of the interests and gifts that I do not know. But the struggle of me is this. I told you in the beginning of my sharing, deep down in my heart, who am I? I'm a pastor, right? But because of the nature of work as an area director, I have so much domestic and international travel. I travel so much. In fact, I don't have a lot of chance to even sit down in a pastor's meeting. The one that I go to most is what Carla had mentioned is the Ministers' Council meeting at Valley Forge. That is the time that I'm able to sit down with a group of pastors. Despite the fact that, in fact, I am a board member of the Philadelphia Baptist Association, I don't have time, and well, I shouldn't say that. It's always a choice, right? I don't have the same opportunity like before that I can enjoy the same kind of fellowship. And if I tell you frankly, I found myself basically spiritually withering that sometimes if I have an issue, I do not know which person I talk to. Now, of course, I have my supervisor in IM, and then I have wonderful colleagues too. I mean, if you know some of our area directors, we have 5 area directors. They are very wonderful people. We do form a very good team. But what I'm saying is, I no longer have the same colleagues. It's not only one person, but really a group of people I can trust and I have good relationship with that I can go to any time and then basically share my heart. I don't have it. Even worse, I'm confessing to you now. My biggest struggle is this. God answered my prayer. I become I think, pretty good bureaucrat. Now, you have to think of in what way, right? But the drawback for me is that when I go to visit churches or even regions, in fact, many times regions, I am seen not as a person or a bug or a pastor. I'm seen as a fundraiser. All my regional colleagues know what it means. When I go there, they are scared. They are scared. There's fear in their eyes. The international ministries guy is coming. Okay, find some way. Contain him. Okay? Give him 3 minutes to speak. Okay, I'm exaggerating. In fact, they are very good. They are very kind to me and to our international ministries. Not only am I seen as a fundraiser, now confession again, I'm also seen as a blank check. That means I know I'm accessible to some resources. But the problem is, many times I know you see me as a good friend, right? I see you as good friends. But many times in the interaction, sooner or later, suddenly I become a provider. Now, it changed the relationship. It changed the nature and dynamics of the relationship right away. Do you know what I mean? And so I have done I'm learning, as I said, I think I'm a good bureaucrat. So I do everything I can to find the resources for you or for whoever need it. But I want to go back to the friendship that we have because I don't want to be a pass-by person And I don't want to be a function. I want to be a human. I want to be a person. I want to be a pastor. So when we talk about the Ministers' Council, we talk about regions and denomination or the societies, in ABC USA. We cannot avoid function. Everybody has a duty or responsibility. We have to perform functions, right? But my challenge to me is, can I be human in my function? Can I be human? Can we be human? And again, fast forward a little bit, we live in a stage that, we relate to each other and communicate to each other in a very, very different way. As I said, I am less physically accessible to pastors' friends. So how do I survive? Now, without going into detail, some of you already know how to do it. But basically, some years ago, I already developed different layers of social media. Now, as I said yesterday, some of you are already my Facebook friends. I enjoy your pictures, I have to tell you. And I have seen a lot of crazy things you have done, and I love you, okay? And because, I'm not the only one, okay? So, the way that I survive is that I have developed layers and layers of social media that I relate to different groups of friends. But let me share two wisdom from my experience. Now, of course, you may have higher wisdom to overcome it. First, do not create one network of social media and share with most. There's no one network fits all, because different groups of your friends, and especially your members and pastors' friends, may have different interests. Okay, so I have different layers of social media. Secondly, now this is very serious. Don't use social media to talk about issues. Please do not use Facebook or any social media to talk about issues, because you find yourself in hell. Okay? If you need to tackle issues and make decisions, try the best to be face to face or through other channels. Social media is not for problem solving, okay? Social media can be problem creation, okay? Lastly, we have a lot of definition of the functions of the Ministers' Council, but I want to boil down into one simple statement. As I said, deep down in my heart is a pastor. Can the mission statement of any Ministers' Council be as simple as, we are pastors committed to love each other and our congregations? The first phase of this statement is very difficult. We are pastors and we love each other. Okay, look around first. Look around. Tell me which one you actually love. Tell me. You don't have to show hands, okay? I don't want to have enough attention, okay? It's very difficult. Pastors, in fact, do not love each other, because we have so many tension and conflicts and different interests and orientation and career orientation or other kind of orientation. We do not love each other. We need to start from the beginning. We need to learn to love each other as pastors. And you know what? Unless we can do that, we cannot love our congregations, because your anger, your frustration, and your all the good bad things will come out from your sermons. Did you find sometimes the pastor, he started with a very good sermon, beginning of a scripture, a good illustration, and suddenly, he or she suddenly, got angry. Suddenly, I talk about the wrath of God, and then in fact he was pointing to some people. Okay. If we do not know how to love each other as pastors, how do you love your congregations? Your congregations see how you function. You cannot talk about love to your congregation unless you actually loved. Lastly, in my paper, I leave you some some questions. I know I'm running out of time, so I leave some question for you to think about. I mean, there are some practical ways that I think we can make improvement as a person, as in our relationship, as also a organization. So, but I will leave this question to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess the best way for us to feel that we are loved is to stop all this talk and get our siesta done, right? Okay, but if you look at the program, it says we'll engage in a conversation from this time to 5 o'clock. And dinner time is at 6, so there's an hour in between. I guess what we can do is, I don't know, maybe we should get a temperature reading here. How is everybody feeling at this time? Are you still human? Dr. Acanto, would you like to say something? You're raising your hand.
I'd like to ask a question.
Oh, okay.
Already.
So Dr. Acanto wants us to get into this open forum right now.
Dr. Magana, can we ask you about 3 or 4 questions?
One question, Dr. Acanto, one question.
Okay, with a follow-up. Okay, 1 point, please. Number 1 is, what is the relation of the Convention Baptist Churches of the Philippines to CPU and Philamer University and Mission Hospital, on one hand, and Mission Hospital and Emmanuel Hospital on the other hand? What is the relation?
I think they are all sister institutions or institutions under the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches. But in the composition of the Board of Trustees and the corporation, I would say that they are owned by the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches, because majority of the members of the corporation of Capiz Emmanuel Hospital, for instance, and also Philamer and CPU and Iloilo Mission Hospital are members of the Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches, majority of them.
Follow-up, please. Just a follow-up question.
Just one follow-up question, Dr.
Can
Acanto.
we
I'm
consider
sorry.
these two as the dancing partners of the convention every time there is a roundtable conference?
I think we can.
Thank you.
Otod Kalay, we will dance
Thank you.
together.
Another question later.
Okay. Dr. Sam?
I have a question for everybody. All this time, we're talking about institutions, pastors, denomination leaders, ministers' council. Why? I have absolutely zero knowledge about the culture and how it is flexing and changing in Philippines, which sits in the pew. We're all talking about the pulpit. What about the pew? I mean, that's where the ministry is done. I don't have any knowledge of that. I hope before we leave, somebody from Philippine Convention educate us. This is the nature of life in Philippine Islands, and these are all the different contexts in which people hear gospel and leaders are engaging in leading the congregation, which is the pew. I just feel like I'm navel-gazing too much, you know?
Dr. Jill, would you like to respond to, would you like to respond to that, sir?
At the beginning of the before the conference started, I was asking the leadership of the convention, why are the presenters all pastors? Where are the laymen? That was not answered. I did not argue because I thought that was planned like that. So now is the question that came out, which is to me legitimate. How about the pew? So that is all what I can say, you know. I would like, however, to ask to raise two questions. One is an observation, the other is a question. I am glad that this time, that's why I mentioned that this is a historic event. Never before this happened. Only now it happened. This is because of the integration of church and mission together. Before, somebody came here as the General Secretary of the ABFMS, and then BIM, and then IM. It's all mission. So churches, we, the convention, are related or were related to the mission branch during that time. But I'm glad that there was a realization worldwide that mission societies and churches integrate, knowing before theologically and biblically that mission comes from the congregation and not from the mission societies. So I'm glad that our partner from the USA represent not only the mission, Dr. Chan Ben, but the area regional ministers of the EBC USA. That is why I was telling Ben, this is a momentous historical event. The other question now is a question, Madam Moderator, one more, if you allow me. I would like to know, because we are talking of relationship, how are you in the US government related? Are you supposed, the different organizations in ABC USA, are you supposed to register as a legal entity?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
and then how is that then related to the question of church in koinonia? Because that is the source of problem in the Philippines, in the convention. The body, the different organizations within the convention insisting on the legal aspect of their existence over against sometimes of the question of fellowship and koinonia. So this kind of problematic, we are still struggling how to settle that because of the legal and the church. The church is a legal entity incorporated. At the same time, it is the Church of Jesus Christ. So these two components of the church and then the organization as the convention has a problem of that also. So I hope our brothers from the overseas can tell how they settle that kind of problem in your society in relationship to the essence of the church and then the legal question that comes into the whole discussion. I think this is the problem in the Philippines, in our convention, and that is the problem lately of our convention in relation to one of our institutions. Thank you very much.
I was listening to you. Madam, can I respond?
Okay, we'll take your response, Dr. Sam, and then Carla has something to say.
I was trying to reflect on that, Dr. Deal. If there are 50 shades of love, there's 140 shades of hate. And this is my 40th year in the American Baptist. When I first joined, and I think my colleague Dr. Dwight would, he's about the same senior as I am in the denominational setting. We were much closer. Now, like the planets and the galaxies pulling away rapidly, we're moving away. For example, after 280 churches in 4 Western states that I oversee, we have no ministers' council related to ABCUSA. We have 17 ministers' councils, but they're not related to ABCUSA. They're autonomous in their own region. It is increasingly becoming for us difficult to hold our unity, however, we are bound by an identity, we are Baptists. And your struggle is our struggle. And the shades of love is decreasing, and the shades of dislike is increasing. That's my personal observation. But my first question, Madam Chair, is that I would like to hear either a Filipino sociologist or an expert in the field of congregational, what does the pew look like today? What kind of folks come to church on Sundays? Metro Manila, in Negros, in Iloilo, and the kind of people that listen to the gospel either respond or don't respond to the struggles and challenges. That excites me. I mean, I'm totally ignorant of it. That's my question anyway.
Okay, Carla, is that a response to the question?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Sam, I'm here. Okay. I am responding as like straddling two worlds. And I'm 51 years old, and probably 40 years was, spent here. And every time I come back, and my home church now is Santa Barbara Baptist Church. That's at least my parents' home church. I try to really observe what's going on in the pews. And when I was growing up, I remember that I grew up in Central Baptist Church, which is now University Church. And the Filipinos, we have this, at least Ilonggo, in Iloilo. When I was growing up, the American way, like the Baptist way, was the preferred model, and even the attire, and I think the other thing is that we are, even if we don't admit it, we are heavily influenced by Roman Catholicism. And growing up, I'm not a sociologist, but I remember about the split level of Christianity by Father Bulata, who's a Jesuit. And I remember that my parents allowed me to experience that the dominant religious, like culture. It's like, it's the dominant culture. And I used to go to the St. Joseph's Parish Church for the florists, because they had a lot of nice snacks there when I was a kid, and offer flowers to Virgin Mary. I didn't even figure that out, that, oh, that's Catholic, that's a lot of fun. And there I learned that I stopped for the Angelus, and I thought all Filipinos do that, and it's not a Catholic thing, it's not a Baptist thing. And then I realized, oh, yan ang isang Katoliko, gali, Portes kami ya. They're Catholic, we're Protestant or Baptist. And so when I started to learn, I was more Americanized as a Baptist. And it only when I was in seminary that we started, around the 80s, I think, to recover some of our Filipino Baptist and just in general, Filipino Ilonggo. But one of the things I learned is the socio-economic realities and even political realities, that it boils down to this: we're very poor. And I heard one of the agriculturists here, I met someone and said, why is it that the IRRI, International Rice Research Institute, is in the Philippines, and we still import rice from Thailand? And I think that also informs our own spirituality. And he's a Centralian, I will not mention his name. He said, Filipinos are very smart people. They are good in planning, but not in implementation. And that's what I heard. But then I realized that even the persons in the pews, many of them are well educated. But I think there are several factors, and part of the struggle is you have to not just as pastors, but as Filipinos, is that we have to really find a way to celebrate the identity as Filipinos. And like what Ben said, what is the faith? Like, I am Iloilo, if you go to Esplanade. That we are a relational culture, and I think that's one of our best values. And I see that in the pews, and people, they don't really, okay, they care, They care that you preach very well and that you preach the Orthodox doctrine, but they really, really care about how you are as a pastor. Can you listen well? Will you pray with me? Will you come alongside me? Will you not tell all my secrets when I tell them to you? So I see that, and then also, of course, there's, because of the diaspora of Filipinos, we have the brain drain. A lot of our bright minds and talented people are not here. They're gone. They're somewhere else. But, well, you know, I struggle with that. I said, I did not plan to be in New Jersey, but because of love. Shades of love. But I still made the intention that really we live in a world that's not monocultural and that we're always crossing bridges. We're going to need to go back and forth. And in the pews, I think that's what's happening. Everyone in the Philippines has probably a relative who is working overseas. That's a reality. So families are displaced. There are all sorts of problems in families. And that was not really the case when I was growing up, because I didn't know a lot of people went overseas, not many. Now it's like everyone else is somewhere else, and they send the money, but the family is disrupted, the marriage is broken, and pastors have to respond to those realities.
You're saying that you have a new form of diaspora in Philippines. So how do you train a shepherd for a diasporic pew?
Correct.
Is that question part of the discussion? No, I mean, I know it should be, but is it a part of the discussion in the seminaries or at the regional or national level?
That I am not aware of, because I have been away for a while.
Thank
But anybody can answer that from among my colleagues, my friends, and sino daw masabat?
And I guess the question is also directed to the pastors. Ano kuno nga klase ka mga tao ang nagaparungko sa inyong mga pew, kuno ang mga pastors? So maybe, we can listen to some of you who would like to respond to that. But meanwhile, Dr. Mangana, yes.
First, the question, why is it that the people of the pews were not around? I think one of the considerations during our preparation is the budget. We cannot afford to bring them in our conference today. That's the reason why. But in terms of the life of the local churches, I would like to bring the idea and what is happening in Bacolod City. What the people of our church is doing in Bacolod City, for instance, one local church will go for a mission work, send pastors in the mountains or in other parts of Negros Occidental, and also one church. And most of the big churches in Bacolod City are doing these things. And I think, and I would like to emphasize that idea, that the people of the pews are doing missions. They are doing missions in their own capacity. And one churches, like for instance, in Bacolod City, one church could have at least 5 outreach churches in the city, both in the city and outside of the city of Bacolod. And for me, that is the life of a Baptist church in Bacolod City, and they are doing missions. And they are people of the pews.
Pastor Joshua, were you raising your hand? No? Okay. Anyone else who'd like to? Sige, Mayor Matt.
I am a regular member of the church, not a pastor. We are also active in mission, as Reverend Dr. Mangana said. But I have one question, or I would like to ask suggestions from the ABC on how to help our organization in the convention on how do you call that, mag-united sa, coordinate with the issues, even in management, because as early part of our discussions this morning until now, it seems that our presenters, personally, my observation, they have a lot of pressing issues about the management of the convention here in the Philippines. And being a member and also a member of a church in a rural area, especially to our pastors, what suggestions can you make that our CBMA, the Convention of Baptist Ministers Association, can work well with the convention? Because there's a rift between the two. The CBMA wants to be declaring that they are a separate entity with the convention, and the convention wants that CBMA should be under the convention. So with that issue alone, there's already a conflict. So we as members of the church don't know how to get through. I have not attended any single pastor's general assembly, and how the convention work with our pastors. So in my own opinion, it seems there's already a problem in management alone. So with that, it will trickle down to the members in the local level. If the pastors are not working well with the convention, it means to say that us local churches should not also cooperate well with the convention, because the pastors are the administrators of the church. So if they cannot work well as pastors and convention, how can we work well with the convention as individual, listening to the pastor every Sunday?
May masabat sina? Any response to that, or any other? What would we? I think the question of Mayor Matt is moving into what we would really like to see happen at this round table. If you will look at the program later tomorrow, I think, and when all these presentations are over, we would like to be able to talk about strategies for collaborative work. And I guess the question of Mayor Matt is, what gifts can the ABCUSA suggest or bring to these different issues that have been raised? But there are we cannot, as we said a little while ago, we cannot resolve all of these questions for now. But it is good enough that we are raising the issues so that we may be able to look at where we can work alongside each other. Let's see. Okay, I will ask Reverend Hobb and then Reverend Halandoon. And
Thank you, ma'am.
Reverend Castillo.
May I follow up, ma'am, the question raised by Dr. Jill? I am very much interested on the legal personality of churches or organizations in the USA, and how is this being maintained by the denomination? Are there some problems caused by this legal personality or registering with the government in the experience of our overseas partners here? The question of Dr. Jill a while ago, ma'am.
I will address that in part, and maybe in a way that also gets to the mayor's question as well, in a sense. In the United States, the regions, our version of Kasapawanan, do have to register as legal, independent organizations, what we would call 501c3, tax exempt, according to the rules of our government. In American Baptist life, our local churches all register as independent 501c3s. The region is a 501c3. And the national structures all are independent 501c3s. What binds us together is not the legality, but a spiritual covenant in which we have said we will work together in cooperative mission, because together we can achieve more for God than if we are separate. And I would like to stress that, as visitors to your home here, there is no way the Americans representing us around the table can really solve your organizational problem, nor will we take any partisan sides in that. But may I make this as an observation? And I only do this because since I've been coming here since 1989, I have fallen in love with you. That's why I hired Elmo to be on my team. But seriously, I have had the privilege of traveling all around the world. I have been to our Baptist partners on every continent on this globe. Behind your back, and Carla knows this, and Elmo knows this, I brag about you wherever I go. I think, to be quite blunt, that sometimes you sell yourselves short. You don't realize what a special family you are. You don't realize how deeply you exude the love of Christ to those of us who come from outside the Philippines and experience you as guests. I understand the angst about the politics of the denomination. And believe me, we Americans can tell you a whole lot about the politics of ours. Because any time you get together fallible human beings, you're going to have politics of both the good and the bad variety. And that is simply endless. I would suggest, however, that, and here I speak, Ben, as a pastor, that when you do counseling with a couple that claims they have marriage problems, usually the first issues they bring up in counseling, what we call the presenting issue, are merely symptoms of something deeper. And let me suggest one possibility of what might be a deeper issue, not just for Philippine Baptists, but I've seen it in Myanmar. I've seen it in Asia. I've seen it in Europe. I've seen it in South America. We have forgotten something deep, and that is that we are a covenanting people. We have been called by Christ into the kingdom of God. And as a result, we realize we do not journey alone as isolated individuals, but that we are a people that journey in community. Moses had his Israel. Jesus had his disciples. The apostles had the churches, and we have each other. And I think when we forget about the spiritual implications of that call to covenantal life, we substitute organizational concerns, which even when we solve them, they don't hit the fundamental issue of the soul, which is how do we love one another? How do we walk with each other and do mission with each other? And frankly, I don't think there's an answer to the organizational problems. They are infinitely diverse. And the minute you solve one organizational problem, you create another, either unintentionally or intentionally. But when we understand the nature of covenant, that we have been called into what the Old Testament calls a relationship of chesed, covenantal faithfulness and loving kindness, we're able to get around a lot of the politics. In ABCNJ, for example, and I'll brag about my region because I love it, our 501c3 organizational meeting, our annual session, meets for 6 to 8 hours a year on a full Saturday. 15 minutes is spent on business. 15 minutes. The rest of the time is worship, study, Bible study, mission stories, call to new service, asking how can we serve the world better in the name of God. We do all of our business in 15 minutes because we have emphasized we are here as a spiritual community. New Jersey used to be known as a battleground. The old timers will tell you annual meeting 20 years ago would have business meetings that were hours long where people would just fight with each other hour after hour after hour over minor things in budgets, over bylaws, over all sorts of things that in the end changed nothing spiritually in the lives of our people. But when we realize we're a covenant people called to chesed, then we have to major on the majors and indirectly address the organizational issues from a deeper spiritual heart and perspective. That's what I yearn for our Baptist community globally. That we learn how to actualize love for one another by going back to the call, which is to be a covenantal people under the lordship of Christ. And if we can do that, it doesn't solve all the organizational problems, but at least gives us an underlying relational level of caring for each other that makes a difference. I've just preached. Sorry, you haven't fed me dinner yet. I'm going to preach if you don't.
Okay, thank you. I think I identified two and we'll end with the two. So, Pastor Halandon, pwede nga si Pastor Castillo mauna. So you will have the last say.
Testing tilaw. This is not a question, Madam, but this is to make our body to be energized. With regards to the question given to us by Dr. Carla, said a while ago that it is her prayer that we should keep on trying and learning to dance together with God's Spirit leading us. And you leave a question and you conclude your message this afternoon through a song. So your question asks, shall we dance? Can I dance with you, Carla? Can I answer you by singing a song? This. Oh, how we dance in the night when we were wed. You bowed our true love, though a word doesn't said, though a word doesn't said. Wow, how nice. So I think this is one of the important things to do on our journey. Is to love. The word love is so very important for us in our journey. Dr. Chan, he leave us also a question that we are pastors, or challenge, a word of challenge, that we are pastors committed to love each other and our congregations. And in our context, there are so many conflicts, and the conflict, we call that an intrapersonal conflict, a substantial conflict, or what else? But the most important thing is that you bowed our true love, though a word doesn't said. So, as what the Bible says, love one another so that they may see our good works and then they may glorify our Father. Amen.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, Reverend Halandon.
It's just a question for clarification from Ben and Nang Carla. Here in our convention, we have the convention and we have the CBMA. There's only one ministerial council. How about in ABCUSA? Because I was not clarified in your presentation. Is there one national ministerial council, or as mentioned earlier by Sam, there were 17 or more not related to ABCUSA? I don't understand.
In my limited knowledge, as I have found out, yes, there are some associations, ministers' council that are not and regions connected to the Ministers' Council. There's one national organization. I just got to know their executive director, Dr. Deborah Jackson, and I am just learning. Frankly, I just paid my dues because I was having a hard time trying to find out how to pay my dues. And then eventually I went online, and then I learned more, and then I actually asked Dr. Jackson what's going on. So although the local chapters are autonomous, the national organization, the National Ministers' Council, is working towards increasing the connections, and also their purpose is really to increase more support and mutual enrichment of ministers. And it's, you cannot make a person be a member. In fact, I was in ABC, New Jersey as an interim pastor with my husband, Dave, and I only applied for membership when I started joining the Women of the Word, because it was required to be a member of the local, at least the local Ministers' Council. And then I started to learn more about it. And then I found out that, there are many local chapters, and they're all independent. And it is voluntary for you to connect with the national organization. And I just talked to our own New Jersey Ministers' Council, the one who is in charge of New Jersey, and he said he just started attending the national meetings, and he said that I realized that it's a very positive experience, and we should encourage more pastors. So I think that's the difference is that we're not centralized.
Okay. Follow up. Is this National Ministerial Council under the umbrella of ABCUSA?
No, it is an associated ministry organization. And it is in covenant with ABCUSA. And historically, it came out from during the time of the Northern Baptist Convention, because the ministers and missionaries at the time wanted to start an organization to support ministers. And it's a separate organization from the Ministers and Missionaries Benefit Board. And so when they started it, it's not like here nga sa CBMA, pwede Ilonggohon. I'm gonna Ilonggo, all right? I'm gonna Ilonggo. Nga bali sa aton ya, ang CBMA, do central, i-correctionan mo kung sala ha, national, no? Ambot kong subong kada circuit may araman nga, no? Pero ang presidente, ang mga opisyal, tanan, national, no? Ang dito ya, kung sa New Jersey ka, may ara nga inang local chapter. Kung namian siya magpa-member, mag-connect sa national, nami gidi, pero wala pilitay. Doon mo na bala ng cooperate ka and mag-covenant ikaw nga amo sina. So ambot ko na sabat ko. Okay.
The term that's misleading is the term covenant. In the Old Testament, covenant is deeply abiding, tightly woven. I am your God, you're my people. In the American Baptist, the term covenant should be understood in the context of federation, very loose federation. In the context, looseness reigns more than cohesion.
Ay, abaw. Okay. Gusto na lang na anay abi?
Isa pa lang, pwede pa. Isa ba, ma'am siya? Pwede lang, Ged.
Sige, malipot na lang. Dr. Acanto, can we just make it a little bit short so that we can...
Very short.
Huh?
You know, a convention of Philippine Baptist churches, purely Baptist na, no? You know, if paintrahon te dere biya ang mga healing institution, kag ang teaching institution, just a inining appetizer, ang budget sang CPU is 650 million. Ang budget sang Mission Hospital is 680 million. If they will just share a part of their budget, 1% sang ila budget, ang Convention Baptist, no, is already at least 13 million every year. 1% lang sa duwala ka institusyon, ha?
Okay.
In other words, what I'm saying is that not possible nga ang Convention of Philippine Baptist Churches himuon ta ini nga Convention Baptist Mission in the Philippines?
Okay.
Anyway, that hasta lang ko dira.
Yes, thank you very
Let
much.
that be a problem.
But I think we'll just give this last word to Dr. Chan.
Well, because the questions you asked about ABC structure, to tell you a little bit more so that you understand, in fact, our context is so different. I'm disclosing some of our internal information. There are many members in ABC USA, okay? If you actually want to tell the two different groups of the members, is that there's one group who has the power and money and deeply involved in the decision-making process. And there's another group who have no money and no power. And, forgive me of saying it, they are really token representation in the decision-making process. That means they have a voice, but I don't think they have actually the bargaining power, okay? So the fat cat, fat cow, whatever, are the home mission societies, international ministries, and to some extent regions. And a little bit, I would say, the American Baptist Foundation, okay? However, we have a lot of, do we say auxiliary members? Yeah. And so there are several organizations who sit in national bodies, and they are involved, you know, in the consultation and the decision-making process. But what I'm saying is this: when you're talking about decision-making affecting, okay, supporting a project, or how much money can be reassigned or used towards a major thing about the denomination, they are really members who do not have a lot of muscle, okay? And I would say that the Ministers' Council is one of them. And that's why I said the good thing about it, it saved them from the power struggle. But I mean, if you're talking about the power of the powerless, they can play that role. I mean, they keep in a very, I mean, much better position to relate to the pastors because they don't have money and power. In fact, I would say, if I have a preference, I think they should keep that position and play an active role. Now, but how do they relate to the other members of resources and power? Now, that will require a mutual understanding and also a mutual relationship. Am I fair to say that?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think let's be kind to ourselves, okay? We can break at this point in time so we can stretch and get ready for dinner, which is at 6 o'clock, because after dinner, there's still another topic presentation.